And I think this is very important. If we believe in it, if we trust in it, we can be it. I'm very privileged and I'm very grateful. And I hope I'm always staying humble. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. D.
I am Julia Hayden, aka Princess Gaia.
So some of our followers may have seen some of our other videos that we've done together, but this was going to be just a little bit different. We are supporting International Women's Entrepreneurship Week, which some of you have attended our in-person events, but we've now moved this event to a virtual format. And we are going to be featuring some outstanding examples of women in entrepreneurship from all over the world. So this particular video is a little bit different from our regular interviews because we're actually going to look at the woman who is behind the whole Princess Gaia persona. Now, some of us may know about Princess Gaia, but I bet you they don't know much about Julia Hayden. So could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I can try that. Okay. So I am physiotherapist and body whisperer in Berlin. And I'm also blogger, author, and people call me Princess Gaia. What else I am a mother, and I'm a mother of a 15-year-old son. He lives with my former husband and his newlywed wife in the south of Germany, or rather even in Austria. So I do not see him a lot. I just want to mention that because I'm actually very grateful about what my former husband and me have created here. It's a beautiful patchwork family, which gives me enough space to be both the entrepreneur and the mother. So actually, I'm educated in physiotherapy. What I did all the time already was talking to bodies. And doing my work, I found out that the body is not alone in this beautiful game we call life. So the body is accompanied by our mind, by our soul, by our environment. And there's interconnectedness between everything, back and forth. Every cell is directly and indirectly interconnected with anything that we feel, that we think, that we say. Some people talk about biopsychosocial chains, others talk about the butterfly effect. Everything we do to ourselves, how we eat, how we practice our sports, how we live our lives, the people we surround ourselves with. This all has an effect on our health, on the health of the people around us, and on the health of our environment. I studied kinesiology, I studied neuro integration. I did rolfing, which is a special therapy on the fascia of the body. I did shiatsu. I went into coaching processes like neurolinguistic programmation and integral theory. So I wanted to have it all. I was just so curious. So what happened is that I was a usual employee in a physiotherapy praxis, and I had to work as it was supposed to happen. So we had 20 minutes for each client. This was not much, and we were supposed to follow the rules of the praxis and of what the doctor said. But most of the time, I would love to have done something different, which not my boss liked, and also my colleagues didn't like. But my clients loved it. So the clients also always said they want to go to Julia Hayden. So what happened was that my colleagues started mobbing me, and also my boss started telling me that I was not right in this job, and I became ill. So I had a nose infection for, I think, almost half a year. I still worked through it, but my nose wouldn't become healthy. In Germany, we have this expression: if our nose is full, that means that we are doing something which we don't want to do anymore. So I knew this was my job. So I started to think about becoming my own entrepreneur and going out of this employeeship. And this was quite scary. So in Germany, we have this law, which is very good, to write a business plan. And if you wrote a business plan which made sense, you got, I think, 70% of your wage paid for 1 year as a supporting for creating your own business. So this is what I did. I went out of the job. My nose was free the moment I left my job. And then I started working. So I developed my own way of working, and finally I could do everything I wanted to do. So I took 60 minutes for each client, and I took a lot of time talking to the people, watching them move. And I found out that there were special movement patterns everybody had, and there were differences in them moving in these different patterns. The way they moved was the way they appeared to the outside world. So I started shaping the movements into a way that people could appear in a balanced way. So I started working with managers of organizations, with CEOs, with owners. Can you work on me because my employees don't take me for serious, or I'm not a good boss because I'm not standing upright. Can you help me standing upright? And all of a sudden I found myself in an organization where the owner of the organization asked me if I could work on his team managers because there was something wrong in his organization. You know, I'm a therapist, so I have to ask for allowance to work with people. And one of these managers of the teams did not want to work with me. And I found out this was not about this one team leader. The whole thing was kind of not really working well. And because I was doing all these other workshops, I talked to my client and I asked him if we could change the whole organization because it was not about, you know, just physical movements. And he said, yeah. So I completely went out of this therapy into change management. So suddenly I was a change manager and I had a lot of fun doing all this stuff. But at this point, I found out that being a woman in a male world, let's put it like this, is quite difficult because they were all very much driven by mind, and I was very much driven by heart. So all of a sudden, I was kind of the mother of the organization. I was kind of the heart of the organization. But I found that this was quite a hard standing I had there. And I found that they didn't value what I did very much. My clients became more and more my friends. And then it was very difficult for me because, you know, hiking and having a good time and going into the beer garden and then talking about their issues. And I didn't really know how many hours of these hours I could charge and how many not. And actually, I think they knew what they were doing there. So, and then I met the Dean of the European School of Governance, who also asked me if I could work for them. So this I did. I worked as the community manager because we had a vision, and I did a lot of things that I also did for the organizations, but I worked for the European School of Governance nonprofit. And my clients knew that. So the moment they found out that I do the same stuff for somebody else, nonprofit, they became a different counterpart for me because they said, if your work is not worth anything for them, then it's not worth anything for us. They sort of started to exploit me more and more. And I just let it happen because I had this vision, I had this passion. My heart was in this business, or in these businesses I worked for. This happened as it did. And in the end, I left the clients and also my biggest client without being paid, and went back to the physiotherapy. So I went back to my old clients who actually did not want me anymore because they said, well, why are you coming back to your body work? You did something better, right? You left us and now you come back. So this was quite hard for me. It was like my first failure. And in the end, I think it was the best thing that could ever happen to me because I completely went into something which I now call reset. So I went back to my old clients. I said, I'm sorry. I developed a new way of understanding the body, mind, soul, interconnectedness. I found out about traumata. I was actually quite happy to be back in the work with the bodies. So this body whispering, which had no name until then, was always happening. So I started creating much more conversations with the bodies of my clients. And I stayed with the European School of Governance because this was kind of my passion. And at the same time, I came across the Gaia Hypothesis, one of my favorite hypotheses ever. It talks about a living planet Earth. So our planet Earth, which is according to Greek mythology called Gaia, has a flow equilibrium upon itself, which is the same flow equilibrium as it is in a cell or in a human body or in any being which lives. So this flow equilibrium on Earth makes clear that the planet Earth might be a living being which has created life on itself to live. And as I found out, I started realizing that every living being, so also Mother Earth, can communicate. I was already very concerned about our world. I was already in this think tank in the European School of Governance. I was already understanding biopsychosocial chains in human bodies and in human systems. So I thought this is just an add-on. And I created a Christmas present for friends, which was the Diary of the Earth. And the Diary of the Earth was a trilogy. I spoke it on the phone. It was 3 times, I think 15 minutes. And I spoke it in German and I sent it out to all my friends. And then I got a lot of resonance. And then they sent it to friends of friends and to friends of friends of friends. And all of a sudden it was in Facebook. So the Diary of the Earth was my first famous piece. And a friend called me shortly afterwards and said, hey, you know what you're doing? You are channeling. You are a medium of Mother Earth. You are channeling Gaia. And from now on, I shall call you Princess Gaia. I was already invited on events, on conferences, on workshops, where I was allowed to have presentations or keynotes. And this is what I then used. I started to call myself Princess Gaia. I started to tell everybody that I am the medium of Mother Earth. And then I started to really do that, write letters from the ocean. This was my first piece I actually presented. Interviews I had with resources, with things. Why did I do that? Because I wanted people to change perspective, to start consuming in a different way, being aware of how they consume, of how they live. Yeah. So then I was Princess Gaia, and then I had all this knowledge in my head and I wanted to write it out. And so I created this blog. I wrote 3 books by now. I met my storytellers and we created this movement, Storytelling for Gaia. A climate movement from Switzerland came towards me and found Gaia's Dream, which is a piece I also wrote. And we started a movement called it Humming for Gaia. And then I found out that the storytelling issue is very, very important and that we all, everybody of us, carries their own stories. And that it's very important for us to listen to the stories of the others in order to find out that we all share the same story, even though we all have a different story. And that we, even though we know each other or we believe to know each other, we do not. So there's much more behind the person we believe to know. I created my own YouTube channel, and in this I publish everything I want to publish. So I now have my blog, I now have my YouTube channel, I now have my praxis. I can work on the individual person and I can work with the whole. And I think this is, I'm very privileged, I'm very thankful, I'm very grateful. And I hope I'm always staying humble.
First of all, this is beautiful. I have a few questions that usually my student entrepreneurs like to ask. Before I ask those questions, I was wondering if you could just tell us, you mentioned you have a blog and a YouTube channel and some books. Would you mind telling us, just if anybody's interested, they know where to look?
At first, I've written a book which is called The Answer of the Body to the Questions of the World. with the subtitle All is One. In this book, I try to compare the cell, the human body, and Mother Earth with each other. We can only be healthy when the world is healthy, and the world can only be healthy if we are as individuals. The second book evolved from this first piece. It is called Discover Who You Really Are in 7 Days. So it is actually giving advice for people to come in contact with themselves, to come in contact with everybody else, and then to come in contact with the world. So in the first book, in The Answer of the Body to the Questions of the World, I have some pictures, and these pictures are being drawn by my sister. So I encouraged her to draw, and she had a blast of a time. The second book, I found somebody I met on Facebook, and I asked him if he would support me with doing my pictures, because he's a young artist who lives for art, and I wanted to sort of support him. So he created the pictures for the other book. And then also, as Princess Gaia, I have this third book. It is called Gaia Dialogue, and there are some of my dialogues with, and some of the letters from the things and from the nature and from Gaia in it. This is also a book which is beautifully illustrated by a friend of mine, and another friend created the design. They both did it just because they liked the message. They never asked for any money. And I'm very, very, very grateful for having found the two of them. So this book is also done by a Polish printer. They didn't use any toxic color. We had to change the format, that we didn't create waste by cutting it in the right size. So we have tried to be very, very, very earth, very Gaia with this book. And this is actually my heart work. I also have a blog on medium.com as Princess Gaia.
And as a proud owner of a beautiful signed copy of Gaia Dialogues, I have to admit it's a really cool book. Those of you that are students, make sure that you request at your library purchase a copy. You know, for just any sort of an aspiring entrepreneur, what kind of advice do you have for them?
So yeah, I actually right now I I realized that I haven't told you all the things that happened, because as Princess Gaia, I actually had a lot of failures, and I went as example. I went to Speaker's Corner to present my dialogues. This was quite hard. So actually, all the things I did, sometimes as Princess Gaia, I was standing in front of 0 people, okay? 0 people. And still I did what I had intended to do. Still I was standing there having my presentation in front of 0 people, and I mean it. So when I then came home from these disappointing events, I sometimes was really sad and crying and disappointed, and I wanted to give up. But then I asked myself, how important is this to me? And is it so important that I want to keep on going, even though this was just another failure, just another disaster? And then I decided to, yes, this is very important to me. This is my passion, and this is what I am, what I want to be. So I trust it. And I think this is my advice I want to give to everybody. Trust and enjoy actually falling down, because what happened to me every time I failed, every time I was disappointed with what I did, it was like a phoenix, burning and then rising from the ashes. So behind every failure was some kind of a treasure, because I came back with so much strength. And I think this is what we ought to do, trust. So my advice is trust in yourselves. If this is really what you want to do, then just go ahead and trust and keep on going.
What a beautiful message. Now, you mentioned just a little bit you had some struggles being a lady working in kind of a male-dominated world. Could you give maybe a little bit more on the examples of maybe some obstacles that you had to overcome that you felt that maybe some of the men didn't have to deal with?
Yes, it's very interesting. actually we are all humans, right? So, and there are many differences. There are differences in cultures, in races, in age groups, and also in gender. And I think these differences actually are beautiful, and they, if we sort of create a good way of connecting, then this would be just the best way of working, because then we have all skills we need together. So I don't know if this is like a male-female thing, but I have the impression that there is a difference, which is that the male behavior is often a very much doing driven behavior and a mind driven behavior, and that I as Julia, I was very heart driven, or I am very heart driven. So my heart decides what I do first before I think, and I'm not the big doer. I'm rather understanding that things are happening through me. So I think the man I worked with took advantage of this. I don't know if I can say that, but I sometimes felt exploited. I sometimes felt of not being taken serious. It was like everything I did was like taken for granted. And the things I said were taken advantage of by the men I worked with to present it as their own thoughts to the others. And I don't know if this is a male behavior, because I didn't work with a female boss. The biggest issue was that I was not paid for the work I did, because I was divorced, I had a lot of things to pay for. They let me understand that what I did was for granted, and that hard work was not as important as mind work was. And I ended up with a lot of debts.
How did you cope with that? Is there anything that you did to overcome it, or what did that look like?
I think the best thing is, to just allow it to happen. I mean, if I was a different person, I don't know if it's a man or a woman thing, I would have gone through a lawyer and would have fought my money back. So fighting was not what I wanted to do, never. So I rather went into backing up and closing myself in and going away in the end.
People need to hear that, right? Because this is I've heard this kind of story before. So, but it's important, I think, for people to realize they're not alone. Could you tell me just a little bit about one of the things that a lot of young women ask is, how do you balance kind of this role as maybe someone in a family and then also as an entrepreneur at the same time? Because they're both full-time jobs, I imagine. So
actually, I'm very lucky, because when I started my business, I still was married, and my former husband and father of my child had a job in a hotel, so he came home at around 1, 2 o'clock. So first my son was in school and I could do my work. Then I could do lunch and homework, and then my husband would do all the afternoon activities with my sons. I had a lot of time to build up my own business, because I was in a very good relationship with my ex-husband. Well, it wasn't so good, because I worked so much that even in the evenings when we had dinner, clients called me, and my husband was often alone with the activities on weekends. All of a sudden, I was more the therapist than I was the wife and the mother. And at one point, of course, my husband felt left alone. He often said to me, "Your clients are more important to you than I am." And so he went and found another woman, which of course I think just was the way it went. This is one of the biggest issues for being an entrepreneur, to really balance a marriage. And so I didn't. The whole divorce actually was the hardest time to balance job, family issues, my son, and we even had a dog. The good thing is that I have a very, very, very brilliant son. He is very empathetic, and he had this feeling of that I need a lot of freedom and love my job, have a passion for my job. He saw that my ex-husband and his father had a passion for being the father of a family. So my son came towards me when he was 12 and asked me if it was okay for me that he lives with his dad and that I could do what I wanted to do. Now I am mother, but I'm not always there. And this is the way I can handle it. So I don't know how other mothers can handle it. I think we have found a good way. We are a very, very good patchwork family. I'm in a good contact with my parents-in-law. I'm in a good contact with my ex-husband and his wife. And my son and me are really connected even over the distance. So I think everything is fine, especially from my point of view. I ask my son always when I meet him if he's okay as well, and he says so. I trust. Again, I trust.
Your openness and honesty, I think, is important for women who are trying to figure out how to balance this. I think that's really powerful. So you mentioned you wrote a business plan because you had to for that kind of grant process. But here's the question I'd like to follow up with. Is it a document that you referred back to kind of along the way, or did you just write it, do the grant, and then maybe not revisit it, or somewhere in between maybe?
To be honest, in the beginning, it was only just a document which needed to be done in order to get this pay. And actually, I even copied most of it from a friend who also started her own entrepreneurship. The only thing I changed was like the individual private piece for me. But then when I started my business, there were these times when I had one client and then I had like 3 hours no client, and then I had the next client, and I had again 3 hours no client. So the adrenaline was like at one point very high and at the next point very low, and life played hardball with me just by sitting there sweating and wondering how many clients do I need in 1 week in order to have the right income. So this business plan actually was very, very important for me. And actually, I did a big mistake in my first year because I gave away vouchers for massages and for stuff, and people bought it for their friends and family for Christmas. So what happened? I took the money and I used the money. And then in January, everybody came for their vouchers to have a massage for free. So what happened is that I worked my ass off for no money because I had it all spent for Christmas presents the year before. And this was like, yeah, another mistake I learned from.
You know, everyone makes mistakes and everyone makes different kinds of mistakes. Wow. You know, I like Horace Lorimer said one time that life is about making mistakes. Just don't make the same one twice. And I think when you tell these stories about these mistakes that you've made, hopefully somebody else doesn't make that exact same mistake when they watch this video, right? If there's anything you could do differently, you know, just knowing if you went back to when you started, knowing everything you know now, what are some of the things you do differently?
Maybe I would enjoy failing more. So we have this figure where I come from. I come from Braunschweig, which is in northern Germany, and we have someone called Till Eulenspiegel. He used to walk, and when he walked down the hill, he would cry because he knew at one point he would have to walk up the hill again, which he didn't like. when he walked up the hill, he would laugh and smile because he knew at one point he could walk down the hill again. So I think this is, I always said this is like me, you know, when I have really something hard to go through, I'm so happy because I know there's some success coming, you know, there's hope on the horizon. But when I feel too good, too secure, everything is just perfect, I really am scared because at one point I know there is something dragging me down again. So I do love failing because after failing comes rising again. And I have learned it's like a learning. Failing is like learning. And the more we learn, the more beautiful life gets in the end.
What a beautiful message. Another question a lot of people ask is, you know, being an entrepreneur is maybe one of the most intense professions you can undertake, no matter what kind of discipline you choose in entrepreneurship. How do you juggle everything that you've got to do?
Well, I'm trying to have as balanced life as I can, and so every hour of the day is my hour, so it's all my time. Everything I do is what I love to do, everything. So this is number one. Number two is that I care for myself. So I do a lot of sports, but not too much. I'm eating what I like, and what makes me feel good. I'm trying to do it like the Buddhist monks I'm always talking about, who tidy their life up before they start working. So I like to start working actually in the late morning or the early noon, because before that I have time for myself. And this is what like the Buddhist monks do. They tidy up everything, they go within themselves, they meditate, because when they then do their work, they do it without any noises from the outside. Then I can concentrate and focus on my clients. The writing, Princess Gaia, this just happens, it just comes. I'm like, oh my God, this is a good idea. I need to write this. And so the moment I have time, I have a break or whatever, I sit down and write, because this is like in my fingers. It's like a passion. I can do it in the night. I can wake up in the night and write. I actually do need only 4 to 5 hours sleep maximum a day, since I think 6 or 7 years I do this. Overall, I try to surround myself with people I like, with food I like, with activities I like, because I think the more we care for ourselves, the more we can care for the others. Like in the plane, when the air gets low, at first you have to put the mask up on yourself, and then you can put the mask up on everybody else, because then you can help anybody. This is also a message, you know, we need to be balanced, healthy, happy first before we can help the others. And I think this is not an ego thing.
You know, information is always changing. There's always new trends, new ideas. There's just always a lot of new stuff going on. How do you keep up with everything? How do you manage? What's your routine to maybe, I guess, stay relevant?
I'm not watching the news. I'm not reading a newspaper. I believe that everything I need to know comes. So clients tell me the news. Colleagues tell me what's going on about, well, at the moment we have the, you know, COVID time, and I'm a therapist. I work very close with people. How does my hygiene concept have to look like? All these things, I don't care. So I'm not looking them up, but I have people who know that I focus on other things. I focus really on being with my client. So they know, and they tell me, oh, by the way, Julia, you, from Monday on, you have to do this and this in your praxis in order to do it legally right. So somehow I trust that the right informations find me on the right time. I'm calling out to all my friends to keep on doing this. this is for everybody, but maybe not only for women, but for anyone who wants to open up his entrepreneurship. I think we can do and have everything we can imagine. It's only a matter of the stories we tell ourselves. And I think this is very important. If we believe in it, if we trust in it, we can be it.
Yulia, aka Princess Gaia, I have to extend my profound gratitude for doing this interview. I can tell you right now, this is something I cannot wait to show my students. And I know that people watching this on YouTube are going to be really excited. And I have to say this, make sure that you check out Princess Gaia's YouTube channel. Give her a thumbs up, not only in this video, on all of her videos. And make sure you subscribe, because she produces some tremendous thought leadership, and it's definitely worth your time to check her out. But thank you again, Yulia. Wow, I'm blown away.
I have to thank you.